What's up guys, it's me Lumos Theromax, and today we're here to discuss Deathstorm, arguably the most underrated and most powerful lanterns that you really come across throughout the entire DC mythos. This guy has literally everything going for him with the power set that he has, and it's really impressive to just sit back and talk about it. But first, be sure to like and subscribe to the Theromax Corps and myself just so you can keep getting more content like this. I'm sorry I've been a little bit absent as of late, but trust me, it's going to be worth the wait. So let's get into the terrifying power of Black Lantern Deathstorm for the last video on blacklanternoctober. So who exactly is Deathstorm? Well, obviously, he is a version of Firestorm from a different universe, but the problem with this universe he's actually from is actually Earth 3. And Earth 3 is pretty messed up. It's where the entire crime syndicate is from. And it's basically a backwards world where the heroes became villains and so on and so on. And in Dr. Stein's case, or at least one of the guys who developed Firestorm, it was no different. He was a scientist who wound up performing all sorts of surgery, all sorts of experiments on people, and he eventually wound up not only experimenting on other people, but experimenting on himself. And one of the things that he did was he fused both the body of himself with a dead body, becoming a new being, the one we now know as Deathstorm. And it's important to know that he's literally stated as being the link between life and death. And that'll become very important down the way. Now, as Firestorm, he ran along the crime syndicate, kicking all sorts of butt, fighting the League. He even manages to trap the League inside the Firestorm matrix of the main continuity's Firestorm at one point in time, which is wildly impressive. But unfortunately, he kind of gets bum rushed by their world's version of Supergirl or Superwoman, the crime syndicate's version of it, as well as Mazash, or Lex Luthor with the powers of Shazam, and every person he's ever defeated. And this character was wildly powerful. Mazash was like insane, man. He could fight the entire crime syndicate by himself. And unfortunately, Deathstorm's skull was crushed in the hands of Mazash, and he met his fateful death. However, during the Blackest Night event, things definitely took a different turn for Deathstorm, because Deathstorm was revived as a Black Lantern. But Deathstorm, upon his revival, became an entirely more powerful character, arguably one of the most powerful lanterns we've ever seen. So let's start with some statements, because you're not a true OG without having some absolutely Chad statements. And one of the things about Deathstorm is he's got some really, really good ones. So Deathstorm is literally death personified, and this is really pointed out during the events of Brightest Day, while Black Hand has essentially been alived and is no longer dead or death personified. So in his absence, Deathstorm kind of steps up into that mantle and becomes the entity of death within creation for Necron specifically. And that's wildly impressive. And to really drive that point home, the life entity itself later on states that it's actually terrified of Deathstorm and what exactly it is that he's capable of. Says he is far superior than Firestorm, the main continuity version, which traditionally main continuity versions of characters are the most powerful. But as we'll see through the Feats section, that he definitely wasn't wrong in that department whatsoever. So let's just get into some general feats, and today I'm just going to hit you guys with a bunch of fun stuff consistently across the board. This is going to be much less organized than I normally have it, but let's get to some of the really crazy stuff that is really within the repertoire of a Deathstorm, my boy here. Deathstorm consistently beats up Firestorm from our universe and even blitzes around him, grabbing things and even loved ones of Firestorm without him being able to do much about it. He can even dodge out of the way of attacks from the antimonitor while unironically telling him that he should chill out. Big props to chill out, Deathstorm. He can even keep up with the Flash as well as Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern, which are both really impressive things as well. And amongst any lantern, he can, besides some of the reds, he can even create his own constructs made out of Black Lantern energies, which of course is an OG lantern trait. In terms of raw AP, he can actually just one-shot Firestorm consistently with his energy attacks, and is also physically strong enough to manhandle Firestorm pretty consistently throughout the entire series. and even has great mastery over his firestorm matrix, which is a power I'll get into a little bit later, allowing him to blatantly defuse other characters who are fused together, utilizing the firestorm matrix, and sometimes even just absorb other people into his firestorm matrix, much like he did the Justice League during the lead up to Forever Evil. And not to mention that he can lift up a battery that the collective force of both Sinestro, Green Lantern, and Star Sapphire cannot. This is wild because Sinestro and Hal Jordan are both very powerful heavy hitters and have some pretty darn good strength feats underneath their belt. Not to mention that he finds doing it radical. Dr. Stein is so funny from this universe, dude. This guy is also a walking tank. He survives an attack that the life entity thought would wipe any Black Lantern present, as well as this is the same life entity that could absolutely wipe, or absolutely did wipe, any Black Lantern that was present during the Blackest Night event. Damn. Not to mention, he also tanks multiple attacks that either damage the antimonitor, like directly, or even tanks attacks from the character who did damage the anti-monitor directly, which both are absolutely insane to consider. We're comparing him to like anti-monitor levels of durability within the confines of the antimatter universe. That's wild. But in all honesty, the real forte of this character is his hacks and how powerful the output of his hacks genuinely can be. For example, we have to essentially discuss what I was talking about before, this thing called the Firestorm Matrix. And the Firestorm Matrix is wildly powerful due to its versatility and pretty extreme hacks. It's been known to cause big bangs by accident, and that's really wild because the Firestorm from our universe, like verbatim on panel, has done it, as well as Firestorm also has moments where he says he's going to do it again. And keep in mind, this is the guy who loses to Deathstorm consistently. So all of those things are really significant to consider. And destroying a universe in DC is obviously more complex than just destroying like a 3D world. Yeah, we could be here all day on that. And one of the other things that the Firestorm Matrix essentially gives to you that is really crazy powerful is molecular manipulation. And Firestorm, albeit is good at molecular manipulation, but Deathstorm is on a whole nether level. And to give you an idea, molecular manipulation is very frustrating because you can essentially turn one thing into anything that you want it to. Take, for example, this scan where somebody he's torturing, he essentially makes a gun out of some rocks nearby and convinces him to shoot himself, but then laughs because he forgot to put the bullets in the gun. But that's like the baby level stuff coming from Deathstorm. How extreme does Deathstorm get? Well, unlike our universe's Firestorm, he can actually transmute anything, even organics. And his favorite thing to do with that is turn people into salt. Like seriously, he turns like half of the characters he's coming across into salt. Talk about making people salty in more than a metaphysical, metaphorical sense. The Firestorm Matrix is also a place he can enter to avoid attacks from wildly powerful beings, even conceptual beings, such as the Life Entity, whenever the Life Entity, as well as the White Lantern Justice League, essentially nuked all of the Black Lanterns during the Blackest Night and turned them all alive and or destroyed them. But instead, he just jumped into the Firestorm Matrix and avoided that entire attack, which is like crazy to think about. Here he also proves he has a greater control over the Firestorm Matrix because he literally rolls Firestorm and turns one of his friends into salt doing so. Of course, he loves turning people into salt for the memes because why not, bro? It's my boy Deathstorm. He can't help it. On a variety of occasions, blatantly overpowers Firestorm and even takes control of his body with some possible possession hacks that he has whenever it comes to his abilities. And one of the most extreme feats that he has is using his insane powers over the Firestorm Matrix and his molecular manipulation. He manages to completely remake an entire Black Lantern Corps series of Justice League members from rocks on the ground nearby. that scale equivocally to the real ones. And he created black rings for them as well. Why is that significant? Well, black rings are made out of dark matter, which is something traditionally associated with the dark multiverse. And dark matter is wildly powerful because all three levels of matter that exist within creation all are really crazy powerful at their high ends. Antimatter as well as dark matter being, in my opinion, some of the stronger two sets of matter that we constantly see exist. I mean, a lot of the Dark Knights were completely immune to damage from anyone whenever it came to their first appearances, so it just kind of depends. Deathstorm can also absorb the minds and souls of others into himself, and uses this maneuver very consistently to just torture people. Like I was saying earlier with the guy he almost convinced to shoot himself, as well as just pulling them into himself and just teasing them with death, dude. Torturing them, or even torturing other people, because Black Lanterns feed on the emotions of people nearby. And he even utilizes his powers of extreme teleportation to teleport people to him and just drag them into his firestorm matrix so they can't escape before they even know what's happening. And for the grand finale of his specific feats, he can not only lift the life entity, but he can corrupt the concept of life for all of creation simply by touching and or holding it. Now, there's also some other things you have to consider whenever it comes to any Black Lantern. Black Lanterns in general have a huge variety of hacks that make them wildly frustrating to fight with. Black Lanterns essentially cannot die, as I said earlier, unless two specific lanterns of both green and any of the other side of the spectrum attack them. They will always regenerate, even if they are literally destroyed by conceptual truth down to dust. They always return. This makes Black Lanterns incredibly difficult to deal with, especially with that regenerative property that's wildly frustrating. On top of that, they can see and detect emotions, and so they know where a lot of different characters are just instinctively. They can even regenerate too fast for characters to be capable of fighting. They not only kill you, but can make you forfeit your emotional essence. They are entirely immune to conventional physical attacks, which is really unfortunate. And that includes magical weaponry, such as the 8th metals that are included inside Aquaman's trident, which managed to harm Darkseid. Physical contact with Black Lanterns actually can infect you with death hacks, so just being touched and especially bitten can really mess you up and even turn you into a Black Lantern. In conclusion, it's needless to say that Deathstorm is a monster. His hacks are high order to extraversal, as he can affect conceptual beings that represent the concept of life within the totality of the DC multiverse itself, and has frustrating matter/salt manipulation. And that's very unfortunate because most characters will just get turned into salt against this guy. In raw attack potency, he can also damage characters who can harm the anti-monitor and or also tank anti-monitor's attacks. His durability is similar simply because no matter what you do to him, unless you scale, pretty much above most characters in DC, or at least to really high-end tier characters, including like life entity levels of attack potency, you can't really do too much of him because he will simply come back. And of course, he can tank attacks that can damage and harm the anti-monitor and be completely fine afterwards. So this guy has got a lot going for him. He's one of the most underrated lanterns of all time. He has an entire story arc in Brightest Day where he's essentially the villain that fights the entire world with what he's doing. And just look at some of this artwork, bro. Look at the artwork this guy is repping. He's got the most drip in the world. 10 out of 10 drip for Deathstorm. That being said, guys, it's been a blast. I'm glad I could crank this bad boy out for you guys. I'm sorry I've been so absent recently. I've had a lot going on, and it's made me a little bit difficult to focus on stuff on here. But that being said, if you want to see more, like and subscribe, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have a specific video that you guys want me to cover. I'm going to be working on a variety of shorts in the future, and I do have a Parallax Hal Jordan video I'll be starting on editing here real soon. So if you guys want to see more content like this, or even that, hit me up on Discord, links in the description, and hopefully I get to see you guys there. in the Theromax Corps, as well as in the comment section. So make sure, I tell you what, why don't you guys tell me who your favorite Black Lantern is and your favorite Black Lantern feat that you want to see in one of my short videos coming out before Halloween. What's the most twisted moment you can think of for the Black Lanterns that should make it into the shorts? And who knows, maybe I'll do it. I'll pin the comment I like the most in the comment section. That is the W. So until next time, guess it's later, Lanterns.